Han Ji-woo laced her hiking boots with practiced efficiency as the morning sun spread across the mountains. The cool air filled her lungs, a welcome change from Seoul's crowded streets. At 32, she had found peace in these solo hiking trips after leaving military service. 8 years as a special operative had left her with skills most civilians would never need, and memories she tried to forget. "Just you and me today," she said to the mountains, adjusting her small backpack. The trail ahead wound through dense forest, far from tourist paths. She preferred it this way. 3 hours into her hike, Ji-woo paused at a small stream. Something felt wrong. The forest had gone silent. No birds, no insects. Just an unnatural stillness that made her skin prickle. She reached slowly for the knife in her boot. The air shimmered about 20 feet ahead. Ji-woo squinted, thinking it might be heat rising from the rocks. Then the shimmer took form, a distortion that grew until it revealed a metallic object hovering just above the ground. Ji-woo dropped to a crouch, eyes scanning for cover. The object, clearly not human technology, extended a ramp. 3 tall figures emerged, their bodies slim and covered in what looked like metallic scales that shifted colors in the sunlight. "Target confirmed," said one in perfect Korean, though its mouth didn't move in sync with the words. "Physical condition optimal." Ji-woo turned to run, but her legs wouldn't respond. A faint purple light enveloped her body. She tried to shout, but no sound came out. "Transport initiated," said another alien, raising a small device. The world around Ji-woo dissolved into bright light. When her vision cleared, she found herself in a small metal room with smooth walls that glowed softly. The paralysis was gone, but a transparent barrier blocked the only exit. Controlling her panic, Ji-woo assessed her surroundings. The cell was roughly 10 feet square with no furniture. Her backpack was gone, but they hadn't searched her thoroughly. Her boot knife was still in place. The barrier slid open and 2 of the aliens entered. Up close, they were nearly 7 feet tall with elongated limbs and large, almond-shaped eyes that blinked sideways. "The specimen is conscious," said the taller one, voice translated by a device at its throat. "I am Kaz. This is Doll. Where am I?" Ji-woo kept her voice steady, hiding her fear. "You are aboard the leisure vessel Endless Wonder," replied Kaz. "You should feel honored. Few humans have seen beyond their atmosphere." "Why me?" Ji-woo stood her ground, measuring the distance between herself and the door. Doll made a chirping sound that might have been laughter. "We are Ruliks. Our people enjoy collecting interesting specimens. Your species shows unusual adaptability despite its primitive technology. You kidnapped me for fun?" Ji-woo's anger flared. "For sport," corrected Kaz. "Tomorrow, you will be released into our preserve. We will observe how long you survive." A third Rulix entered, carrying a tray with something that resembled food. "I am Lee, custodian of the preserve. You will need sustenance." Ji-woo recognized the predatory assessment in their eyes. She had seen it before in humans who viewed others as less than themselves. She decided to play along, slumping her shoulders and allowing fear to show on her face. "Please," she whispered, "I just want to go home." The aliens exchanged glances. "They always say that," Doll noted with what sounded like boredom. "This one seems less aggressive than the last human." "Good," said Lee. "The last one damaged equipment before we subdued it." After they left, Ji-woo examined the food, strange purple cubes that smelled like mint. She nibbled cautiously, finding them oddly energizing. Next, she explored every inch of her cell, finding nothing useful except a small vent near the floor. Through the transparent barrier, she could see other cells across a corridor. In one, a creature with iridescent scales paced nervously. In another, a furry being with 4 arms sat motionless. Ji-woo closed her eyes and controlled her breathing. Panic would not help. Instead, she recalled her training: assess the situation, identify resources, develop a plan, and wait for opportunity. When night cycle came and the lights dimmed, Ji-woo lay on the floor near the vent, listening to the ship's subtle vibrations. She could feel the faint hum of engines and occasional movement beyond her cell. They think humans are primitive, she whispered to herself, touching the knife still hidden in her boot. They've never seen what happens when you corner someone trained to survive. Tomorrow they would release her into their preserve. They expected entertainment. Jiwoo planned to give them something entirely different. The morning began with a harsh buzzing sound as the cell barrier dissolved. 2 Rulix guards stood waiting, holding what appeared to be long silver rods. Jiwoo had barely slept, her mind busy planning rather than resting. "Time for your release, human," said one guard. "Do not attempt to resist." Jiwoo kept her head down and shoulders hunched, maintaining the facade of fear she had cultivated. The alien seemed to relax slightly at her apparent submission. They escorted her through curved corridors that hummed with energy until they reached a large circular chamber. A platform in the center glowed with soft blue light. Kaz waited there, alongside Dahl and several other Rulix she hadn't seen before. They wore ornate coverings that sparkled with embedded lights, clearly marking them as different from the guards. "Our entertainment begins," announced Kaz to the gathered Rulix. "This specimen will be released into Sector 3. The current survival record for humans is 5 days. Dahl approached, holding a small device. "This will track your vital signs. Removing it will cause pain." She attached it to Jiwoo's wrist where it bonded instantly to her skin. "Any final questions before we begin?" Lee asked, his tone suggesting boredom rather than concern. Jiwoo looked up, deliberately allowing fear to show in her eyes. "What am I supposed to do in there?" The Rulix chittered with sounds that must have been laughter. "Survive, of course," said Kaz. "That's the entire point." Light engulfed Jiwoo and the sensation of falling overtook her. When her vision cleared, she stood in what appeared to be a dense forest. But looking closer, she noticed subtle wrongness. Leaves that moved too uniformly in the artificial breeze, soil that felt slightly rubbery underfoot. Above her, small orbs hovered at various heights, monitoring drones, she guessed. Jiwoo maintained her frightened appearance for several minutes, turning in circles as if confused and overwhelmed. Only when she spotted a blind spot between drone coverage did she allow her expression to change. Her eyes hardened, jaw set with determination. "First water," she whispered to herself, returning to her training. She listened carefully and detected the sound of running water to her east. Following it, she found a small stream that looked clean enough. After drinking, Jiwoo began gathering materials, flexible branches, stones with sharp edges, vines that could be used for binding, all while appearing to wander aimlessly for the watching aliens. By midday, she had fashioned a crude spear and several snares. She found a small cave partially hidden by vegetation and made it her base. The drones occasionally swooped lower for better views, but she made sure to look appropriately stressed and frightened when they approached. "The human is building primitive tools," observed Lee from the control room where the Rulix watched multiple screens showing different angles of the preserve. "They always do," said Dahl, sipping something from an ornate container. "It becomes interesting when they realize they cannot escape." On screen, Jiwoo appeared to be struggling to build a fire. What the Rulix didn't notice was that she had positioned herself precisely where smoke would obscure a drone's visual sensors. By evening, Jiwoo had created a small, defensible position. She had identified which plants might be edible by watching small creatures in the preserve. She had mapped drone patterns and identified blind spots in their coverage. As artificial night fell and the lighting dimmed in the preserve, Jiwoo pulled a loose stone from her cave wall, revealing a small cavity she'd discovered. Inside, she stored the components she'd gathered throughout the day. A reflective piece of metal from near the stream, fibers stripped from certain plants, and a crystalline object she'd found embedded in a tree that seemed to generate heat when squeezed. On the monitoring screens, the Rulix saw only a tired human curled up for sleep. They missed her fingers working methodically in the shadows, connecting components she'd hidden from their view. "This one seems less aggressive than most," noted Kaz. "Perhaps we should introduce a predator tomorrow to increase the entertainment value." Agreed, said Dahl. The betting pool suggests most expected to break down by day 3. In her cave, Jiwoo smiled in the darkness as she completed her first project, a small device cobbled together from materials in the preserve that could temporarily disrupt the nearest drone's sensors. Not enough to raise alarms, but enough to create moments of privacy. Day 1 complete, she whispered to herself. Tomorrow we start fighting back. Above her, a drone recorded her sleeping form, its operators unaware that their primitive entertainment was far more dangerous than they had anticipated. Dawn broke with an unnatural perfection in the artificial preserve. The light didn't gradually strengthen like a real sunrise. It simply increased at a programmed rate. Jiwoo had been awake for hours, watching this mechanical process through the mouth of her cave. A low growl from nearby confirmed her suspicions. The Rulix had introduced something new overnight, something designed to hunt her. Day 2, she whispered. Time to disappoint our hosts. She moved to the back of her cave where she had hidden her first creation, a small signal disruptor made from crystal components and metallic pieces she'd gathered. It wouldn't work for long, but it only needed to create brief gaps in the drone coverage. Outside, she spotted the predator, a 6-legged creature with mottled purple skin that blended with the underbrush. Its head swiveled constantly, tracking scents with what appeared to be thermal sensors above its eyes. Jiwoo waited until the nearest monitoring drone drifted to its farthest point in its patrol pattern. She activated her disruptor. The drone's lights flickered briefly. In that moment, Jiwoo sprinted to a new position, moving with the silent efficiency that had made her valuable to military operations. When the drone recovered, it would show her still in the cave. From the control room, the Rulix watched with growing interest. The predator is approaching the human shelter, noted Lee. This should provide excellent entertainment. On their screens, the image of Jiwoo appeared to be sleeping inside her cave. The predator crept closer, its muscular body low to the ground. Strange, muttered Dahl. The vital sign tracker shows elevated heart rate but not fear response. The predator pounced into the cave with shocking speed. The Rulix leaned forward eagerly, only to watch in confusion as the creature thrashed around, finding nothing but an empty space. Where is the human? Demanded Kaz. Check all feeds. The monitoring system showed no trace of Jiwoo. Alarms began to sound as technicians frantically searched different sectors. There, shouted Lee. Sector 3, Quadrant 6. The screen showed Jiwoo moving with purpose toward one of the maintenance access points, small hatches disguised within the preserve's landscape that allowed technicians to service the environment systems. How did she? Dahl's question was interrupted by a more urgent alert. Drone 7 is offline, reported a technician. Complete signal loss. In the preserve, Jiwoo crouched beside the fallen drone, working quickly with her stone tools to extract key components. The vital sign tracker on her wrist had been cleverly manipulated, wrapped with insulating material from the cave, and programmed with false readings using pressure points she had learned during her military training. The Rulix dispatched security, drones, larger, more aggressive machines equipped with stunning capabilities. Jiwoo heard them coming and smiled. This was exactly what she had been waiting for. The first security drone rounded a cluster of trees, its weapon systems activated. Jiwoo remained perfectly still behind a large boulder, the components from the fallen drone reconfigured into a crude but effective electromagnetic pulse generator. When the security drone moved into position, she triggered her device. The pulse wasn't powerful enough to affect the entire preserve, but at close range, it completely disabled the security drone, which dropped heavily to the ground. Second drone offline. The control room had erupted into chaos. How is this possible? Humans don't have this technology. She's building it from our own components, realized Kaz, his voice tight with concern. This is not standard human behavior. Jiwoo moved quickly to salvage parts from the security drone, which contained much more useful technology than the monitoring drones. Within minutes, she had created a more powerful disruptor and gained access to the drone's communication frequency. The control room, the screen suddenly flickered. A moment later, Jiwoo's voice came through their communication system. Hello, Rulix. she said calmly. "I think it's time we renegotiated the terms of your entertainment." "Impossible." Doll slammed her hand on the console. "Block that transmission." "I've accessed your basic command protocols," continued Jiwoo. "And I've learned quite a bit about your ship's systems. Did you know your maintenance access points connect directly to primary environmental controls?" The Rulix frantically tried to lock down systems, but alarms continued to sound throughout the control room. Oxygen levels in their private quarters began to drop as Jiwoo redirected life support functions. "Three options," said Jiwoo. "First, you can try to capture me, but I've rigged several areas with traps using your own technology. Second, you can try to kill me, but then you'll never regain control of the systems I've accessed. Or third, we can talk about getting me and the other captives home." Lee looked at the others in horror. "What is this human?" Kaz checked Jiwoo's file on a screen. "Military training, survival specialist, enhanced tactical operations." "You kidnapped the wrong human." Jiwoo's voice came through again. "Now shall we discuss terms?" The Rulix looked at each other in growing understanding. Their entertainment had become something far more dangerous. The maintenance tunnel was narrow and dimly lit, forcing Jiwoo to crawl on hands and knees. She moved quietly, pausing often to listen for pursuit. The improvised electronic device she'd built from drone parts guided her through the labyrinthine system that serviced the artificial ecosystems. "Access point ahead," she whispered to herself, checking the crude map she'd constructed based on patterns in the ventilation system. "Should lead to central habitation sector." Behind her, in the preserve she had escaped, the Rulix security teams were still searching. Unaware she had slipped into the ship's infrastructure nearly an hour ago. The distraction she had created, a series of small electromagnetic pulses triggered at timed intervals, had them chasing shadows. Jiwoo reached a junction where the tunnel widened into a small maintenance hub. Screens displayed ship schematics and system diagnostics in the Rulix language. She studied them carefully, her military training helping her recognize patterns even in the alien script. Life support, propulsion, and containment sectors, she murmured, memorizing the layout. The device she'd built from drone parts included a basic translation function, enough to decipher key terms. In the control center, panic had given way to cold calculation as the Rulix realized the extent of their problem. "The human has disappeared from all monitoring systems," reported Lee, frantically checking screens. "Last confirmed location was near maintenance hatch 12B. Kaz paced the room, his scaled skin shifting to a darker hue that reflected his stress. "Lock down all systems. Restrict access to critical functions." "Already attempted," said Dahl. "But she's using maintenance overrides. Those systems were designed with emergency access that bypasses security protocols." "How could a primitive species figure this out so quickly?" demanded Kaz. A junior technician spoke up hesitantly. "The file indicates the human has military background, with special training in hostile environment adaptation," Kaz hissed with frustration. "We selected a warrior-class human for basic entertainment?" While the Rulix argued, Jiwoo had reached the first containment sector. Peering through a ventilation grate, she saw cells similar to the one where she had been held. Most contained aliens of various species, some humanoid, others utterly unlike anything from Earth. In one cell, a tall being with 4 arms and iridescent blue skin sat motionless in meditation. In another, a creature resembling a large feline with scaled skin paced nervously. Jiwoo removed the grate and dropped silently into the corridor. The blue being immediately noticed her, rising with fluid grace. "You are not Rulix," it observed, in a melodic voice. "How did you escape your cell?" "I'm human." "From Earth," Jiwoo replied, approaching the transparent barrier. "I'm getting out of here. You want to come?" The being blinked large pupilless eyes. "I am Som of the Korra. My people are scientists. I was captured while studying spatial anomalies near your solar system. Can you help me understand more of their technology?" Jiwoo asked while examining the cell's locking mechanism. Som nodded. "Free me, and I will assist you." Using components from her makeshift device, Jiwoo overrode the cell's security. The barrier dissolved, and Sam stepped out, stretching all four arms. The feline being is Turo, a Vol engineer, Sam explained. His species has natural electrical manipulation abilities. Very useful for what you appear to be planning. One by one, Jiwoo freed the captives who seemed most likely to help. Sam, Turo, and two insectoid beings called Nex, who communicated through rapid clicking sounds but understood ship systems. "Why help us?" asked Turo after Jiwoo explained her plan. "On my world we have a saying," she replied while distributing improvised tools. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." Meanwhile, the Rulix had initiated emergency protocols, sealing compartments, and dispatching armed security teams throughout the vessel. "We've detected unauthorized access in Containment Sector 3, a technician reported. Multiple specimens are no longer in their cells. Kaz's scales turned almost black with rage. "The human is freeing other specimens? This is beyond a security breach. This threatens the entire ship. Should we contact Homeworld for assistance?" asked Lee nervously. "And admit we lost control to a primitive species?" Dahl snapped. "Absolutely not. We handle this ourselves." In a service corridor 2 decks above, Jiwoo and her allies moved purposefully toward the ship's central systems. Sam translated technical information while Turo used his natural abilities to bypass security barriers. "The ship operates on 3 primary power nodes," explained Sam. "Disrupt those and we can force an emergency protocol that will lock the Rulix in their personal quarters." "Can we also access navigation systems?" asked Jiwoo. "We need to find a way to contact authorities about what they're doing." Turo's whiskers twitched with what might have been a smile. "The Rulix are already in violation of Galactic Council regulations regarding sentient collection if we can access their communication array." Jiwoo nodded, a plan forming in her mind. "Then let's head for the command center. Time to show our hosts that their entertainment just became a revolution." Alarms blared throughout the ship as the Rulix realized their carefully constructed hierarchy had been completely upended by what they had considered a simple, primitive creature for their amusement. The command center doors slid open with a soft hiss. The Rulix inside turned in shock as Jiwoo stepped through, flanked by Sam, Turo, and the 2 Nex engineers. The human woman looked remarkably composed for someone who had been intended as prey just 2 days earlier. "This vessel is now under new management," Jiwoo announced calmly. In her hand, she held a device cobbled together from drone parts and ship components, what the freed captives had helped her identify as a neural disruptor. Kaz rose from his control chair, scales shifting to an aggressive red pattern. "This is outrageous. Security teams are already on their way." "No, they're not," replied Jiwoo. "Turo has rerouted all internal transport systems. Your security teams are currently trapped in the lower decks." She gestured to the feline alien, whose whiskers twitched with satisfaction. Dahl lunged toward an emergency control panel, but one of the Nex engineers had already disabled it. The insectoid clicked its mandibles together in what might have been laughter. "Please sit down," Jiwoo said, her voice hardening. "I'd hate to see what this device does to Rulix neural pathways." The aliens reluctantly complied, their arrogance replaced by unmistakable fear. "Sam, can you access their communication systems?" Jiwoo asked. The 4-armed Korra moved gracefully to the main console. "Already working on it. Their encryption is simplistic." Within moments, Sam had opened a channel to what appeared to be an official government frequency. A stern-looking alien appeared on the main screen, clearly startled by the unexpected transmission. "This is Enforcement Director Vale of the Galactic Council," the alien said. "Identify yourselves." "Director," Sam began formally. "I am Sam of the Korra Science Academy. I and numerous other sentient beings have been illegally captured by these Rulix for entertainment purposes in violation of Council Statute 7290 regarding the treatment of sentient species." The director's expression darkened. "These are serious accusations. Rulix vessels are registered for scientific research only." "Perhaps you should see their research for yourself," Jiwoo suggested, nodding to Turo, who activated the preserve monitoring feeds. The screens filled with images of the various habitats where captured beings had been forced to struggle for survival. Lee stepped forward, desperation in his voice. "Director, this is a misunderstanding. We are conducting important behavioral studies." "On me," Jiwoo interrupted. "A human from Earth? A planet that isn't even part of your council?" She held up her wrist where the tracker still clung to her skin. "They placed bets on how long I would survive their predators." The director's eyes narrowed. "Earth is in a protected development zone. No contact is authorized, let alone specimen collection." He turned to someone off-screen. "Dispatch enforcement vessels immediately to these coordinates." Kaz slumped in defeat. "You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea what will happen to us?" "Probably less than what you planned. For me," Jiwoo replied without sympathy. "On my world, kidnapping is a serious crime." Sam approached Jiwoo as they waited for the enforcement vessels. "The council will want to return everyone to their homeworlds, including you." Jiwoo nodded. "That's what I'm counting on. But first, I want to ensure this never happens again, to humans or anyone else." Within hours, 3 enforcement vessels had surrounded the Rulix ship. Teams of officials documented the illegal captive collection and began processing the freed beings. The Rulix owners were placed under arrest, their vessel impounded. Council Medical Officer Tren examined Jiwoo carefully. "You appear to have suffered no permanent physical harm, but the psychological trauma of such an experience—" "I'm fine," Jiwoo interrupted, "but I have a request before I return to Earth." Director Vale joined them. "After what you've endured, and considering the unauthorized contact with your species, we are prepared to be accommodating." "I want knowledge," Jiwoo said simply. "Earth should know we're not alone. We should be prepared for further contact, hostile or otherwise." Val considered this carefully. "Your species is still developing. Full disclosure could be harmful." "They kidnapped me for sport," Jiwoo pointed out. "Others might do worse. My people deserve to know what's out there." After lengthy discussions among council officials, a compromise was reached. Jiwoo would return to Earth with limited technology and information, enough to begin preparing humanity for eventual contact, but not enough to disrupt natural development. 3 months later, Jiwoo stood before a closed session of the United Nations Security Council. Behind her was a small object recovered from the Rulix vessel, a universal translator that would verify her incredible story. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "I'm here to tell you that we are not alone, and we need to prepare." She activated a holographic display showing the Galactic Council space map. "And we don't have much time." In the vastness of space, the former luxury vessel of the Rulix aristocrats was being repurposed. The first Earth embassy to the stars, crewed by volunteers trained by Jiwoo herself. The universe had unwittingly awakened a sleeping giant when they chose to kidnap a human for entertainment.